All right, then we'll call this meeting to order of the Oversight Committee for the City of Glendale, and this is February 26th. And may we have a roll call, please?
Board members of Karian. Here. Berry.
Here.
Nakasone.
Here.
Choa. Sheehan.
Here.
Steger.
Here.
Chair Raggio.
Here. And a report from the Secretary?
Agenda for the February 26, 2014 special meeting of the Glendale Oversight Board was posted on Thursday, February 20th, 2014 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Next item.
There are no approval of minutes, nor no minutes for approval, and the only items at 4A is Director of Economic Development regarding recognized obligation payment scheduled for July to December 2014, ROPS 14-15A, and repayment of reestablished city loan agreement. A1 is a resolution adopting recognized obligation payment schedule for July 1st to December 31st, 2014, ROPS 14-15A, including administrative budget. 4A2 is a resolution authorizing the Successor Agency to commence repayment of the reestablished city loan agreement in compliance with Health and Safety Code Section 34191.4B2A, and then there is one other item after that.
Thank you. Elena?
Good afternoon, board members. This is our sixth payment schedule. This represents the first half of fiscal year 2014-15, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of items on this, ROPS, and then take any questions from the board members. Some of the notable items include our debt service refunding. If you recall, the Oversight Board directed us to refund our 2002 and 2003 outstanding bonds. We have done that since then, and that has reduced our debt service by about $1.8 million annually. That money is now being spread amongst the taxing entities represented by you folks. Alex Theater, if you recall, we have two agreements with the Alex Theater. One is for the lease, and there's a series of capital improvement projects that are still ongoing. The second agreement with Glendale Arts was for the management of the theater. On this ROPS, this is the last subsidy or assistance to Glendale Arts of $415,000. So after this ROPS, we will retire that agreement, and we will no longer be funding Glendale Arts for the management of the theater. I guess the biggest point I want to make is our reestablishment of the city agency loan. This is a new thing. Any agency that has received a finding of completion from the Department of Finance is allowed to go back to any loans that were given to the agency by the host city or county and to reestablish those loans. There is a formula in the statute that caps the maximum amount of those loans. And just by way of backgrounds, the loans were provided by cities or counties to redevelopment agencies that were starting up so that they could initiate redevelopment activities and, in turn, increase the tax base. In Glendale, we did have a loan, and based on the new formulas, the outstanding balance is about $66 million. We have utilized the Department of Finance's calculator on their website to plug in our residuals from fiscal year 2012-13 versus 13-14, and that gives us a $1.5 million loan repayment for this upcoming fiscal year 2014 and 15. And per the statute, about $300,000 or 20% of that has to be deposited into the low and moderate income housing asset fund. That fund goes towards affordable housing programs. So I want to point that out. There are about 100 agencies statewide that have not secured a finding of completion, and so we are one of the 300 or so agencies that are able to take advantage of this provision. On February 18th, so just about a little over a week ago, the governor did sign a new bill known as Assembly Bill 471 into law, and it took effect immediately. And what that does is it allows the housing entity. So if you recall, when dissolution happened, there was a there was a redevelopment, and then there was a set-aside, housing set-aside. And so this bill authorizes the housing entity or the group that took over the housing activities to be able to fund about $150,000 annually to pay for administrative costs. So we have added this amount to this ROP, so this is the first time you're seeing it because it's a brand-new bill, and that is line item 140. I wanted to provide an update on two of our major projects, line items 12 and 13, which are the Alex Theater expansion project and the Museum of Neon Art. Both of them are under construction, and they're both about 70 to 75% complete. We anticipate finishing up those construction projects by the time this ROPS concludes. We have run this ROPS through the validation process from the State Department of Finance. It has passed validation, and so following your approval, we will be uploading the ROPS to the Department of Finance's digital website that they've set up to accept ROPSs. What I do want to call out is you just received 2 sheets from Cassandra Pruitt, and as we were preparing this ROPS and after we finished putting the packets together with you as we were reviewing in preparation for this meeting, we found a couple of formula errors in the DOF's RAD application, the ROPS application. We contacted them, and they've told us not to adjust any of their formulas, just make notes of what it is that's not matching, and then just send up the ROPS to them. So what you received are 2 sheets. It's the summary sheet and the report of cash balances. The blue boxes and highlights are the notes that we've added. And essentially what happened is during ROPS 1314A, we had requested $16 million in RPTTF, and because of the limited amount of tax increment, the County of Los Angeles distributed $1.2 million less. And so the DOF's formula doesn't take into consideration receiving less, and so when the formulas are plugged in, it makes it appear as though we spent about $1.4 million less. And so we have contacted DOF. We've made this note, and when we send this up to them, we anticipate going through a back and forth with them to get this corrected. But I just wanted to point it out, hand it out, so that we have the correct ROPS that's uploaded to the website, the one that's been approved by you.
And the correct number is 315?
Yes, correct. So that's what I wanted to highlight. I'll take any questions from the board members on the ROPS.
Questions?
It's an Excel. It's an Excel document, and there are certain cells that are locked by DOF, and so, and it computes it. Correct. Correct.
Were they the providers of the programming on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, on the loan repayment to the city, it looked like the original proposal was that it was going to be amortized over 12 years, $5.5 million, about 5.5. But we're only doing 1.5 this year. So
Yeah.
how's that going to affect the loan repayment?
I'm glad you pointed that out. The statute calls for us to apply the LAIF rate, which is a local agency investment fund, each year. And as our residual amounts going forward are not a set amount, so depending on what our ROPS obligations are, what the tax rolls are, the amount of residual is always going to fluctuate. So it's almost impossible for us to come up with a defined payment schedule. So this is our attempt to say, to the extent we can, we want to pay down the loan by about $5.5 million. In this first year, we're only able to pay 1.2. So what we're asking the office to allow us to carry that balance forward to future years until we pay ourselves fully.
If I might add 2 legal points on that. One is that the statute requires that only that we establish reasonable repayment terms. This is as reasonable as we can make it, given the fluctuations noted by Ms. Babolian. And so we'll have more information as we move forward with the approvals of these loan repayments in terms of further direction from DOF on, as the schedule moves forward, whether they want to amend the statute in any particular way. But it's virtually impossible for us to come with a set amortization schedule for you because we do not know what that residual amount will be year over year.
But they do specify that the life rate is what you should be using.
That is specified by statute, correct.
This is a question just as curiosity, but how is the Alex going to manage?
I'll defer to Mr. Lansby, who sits on their executive board.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Successor Agency Board, or Oversight Board, I should say. The Alex Theater has been working for several years on becoming, with the term, self-sufficient. The biggest key right now is the expansion of the theater. That will allow additional shows, larger, what we hope will draw larger audiences because of the makeup of the theater. Right now, you can't have a show that has any sets at all because there's nowhere to put it. It was built as a vaudeville theater, not as a theatrical, dramatic theater. With the expansion, they should be able to bring those types of shows in. They're also going through a lot of modernization that should reduce their utility costs significantly. They're entering into new programs. They've become the box office for Glendale Community College. In their theater, they provide ticket services. So different arrangements like that in different tools and different strategies hope to make up that $415,000 by the expiration of our agreement with them.
So it will become a theater.
It will be a theater, or be a regional performing arts theater, but its ability to take on more shows will be greatly expanded.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Any further questions, Rival?
I have one question. So if it turns out that we pay next year, we can only pay back $1 million. Let's say now we're almost $10 million now behind. It is under rules and under code. It's okay for us to then have $15 million paid the third year to recover the $5 million payments that we haven't made. I'm just trying to see, can we make a one lump sum payment on year 3 to make up for what we haven't done in the year 1 and 2?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, no, the short answer is no. There is a prescribed formula in the statute that says this is how you repay those loans. This is the maximum amount you can repay. And that is based on a base year and then an amount that's left after the other taxing agencies get their pass-throughs. From year to year, that's going to change, and that's why we don't know what a schedule is going to be. And I think the Department of Finance has realized that that part of the statute doesn't make a whole lot of sense to say put together a reasonable repayment schedule, because it's fixed in the code how you repay yourself. And it is what it is. The numbers, it's math, calculates out. Once you know X and Y, you come up with Z, and that's what you can use to repay. It's a formula that's based on the code that we can't change.
Okay. Now, then let me go one step further. It's a 12-year repayment for the loan. Is that correct? Is that what it was?
Again, Mr.
Oh, it is a multi-year payment
Correct.
plan. Could there be a time where the city is not paid for, let's say, half of its loans that it gave to the successor agency?
Well,
Could the city be holding the bag for a portion of these loans?
I will.
At some
I will
point.
tell you, technically, those loans have been written off, and the city, not sure the term, had to forego $72 million and write off $72 million off its books. Following that, with new legislation, if agencies did certain things that they were supposed to do to dissolve the redevelopment agencies, those loans would then become valid again. They have already been written off, but there's still the obligation to repay them. And while we estimate that it may be 12 years, based on a cash flow that we've done, it will be as long as it takes to repay that amount of money.
So any answer is speculative.
Any answer is speculative.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that to the question of is there ever an opportunity to make a big lump sum payment, we wouldn't be able to do that through the ROPS. What it would require is all the other taxing entities to say, we'll forego our share of property tax in order to repay the city, which isn't really in the spirit of the Dissolution Act itself.
I think, Albert, as I read our charter, the Oversight Committee will be dead by that time.
Yeah, that's basically what I thought, yeah.
So
So we don't have to worry.
we shouldn't
Yeah, I
have to
get it,
worry
I
on
get
that.
it. Beautiful.
Thank you. Further questions? Are we ready for a motion?
Motion to accept?
Is there a second?
Second.
Both 4A1 and 2?
Yes.
Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Board members Apkarian,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Nakasone,
Yes.
Ochoa, Sheehan,
Yes.
Yes.
Chair Raggio.
Yes. Motion passes. Next item.
Item 4B is Director of Economic Development regarding revisions to Oversight Board Resolution Number 32 and Number 33 to include certain findings as outlined in Health and Safety Code Section 34181E. B1 is Resolution Revising Oversight Board Resolution Number 32 to include certain findings as outlined in Health and Safety Code Section 34181E. Resolution, and 2 is Resolution Revising Oversight Board Resolution Number 33 to include certain findings as outlined in Health and Safety Code Section 34181E.
Elena?
Okay. This goes back to our December board meeting. You reviewed and approved a couple of agreements in regards to the Lemley Lofts project, and subsequent to your meeting, we sent up the resolutions and the agreement to the DOF. They had their review period and determined that there's a couple of pieces of findings that are included in the statute, specifically Section 34181E, that were missing from the resolution, although they were included in the staff report that went along with it and the agreements themselves. DOF has to look at these resolutions consistently from one agency to the next. So what they requested of us is to bring this back to the Oversight Board, include those findings in the resolution, and then send it up to them again. Because they've already had about 40 days to review this, they did indicate an expedited review. And I will just read quickly what we added to the resolution with one minor modification we'd like to add. If you go to the resolution, let's see, it's the second page, to the second section, we want to add that conveying the project site to the developer will reduce liabilities of the agency by eliminating its responsibility as a long-term landlord, and the city's contribution of approximately $728,000 to the taxing entities is in the best, and an increase in property taxes from the development of the site will increase net revenues to, and is in the best interest of the taxing entities. So we just want to add the words, and is in the best interest of the taxing entities. So we will revise this resolution with that wording if approved by you. We will do that with both Resolution 32 and 33.
Question? If there are no questions, may I have a Motion to approve, please. Or a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Board members Apkarian,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Nakasone,
Yes.
Ochoa, Sheehan,
Yes.
Seeger,
Yes.
Farraggio.
Yes, and the motion carries. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communication. However, no cards were submitted for this portion.
Just a quick note, I'm sorry. Motion with the amendments added to it was approved, correct?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well, is that it was as amended. Thank you.
Yes, as amended.
There were no cards
There's no
submitted for the
cards.
next portion. Any board member or staff comments?
I have a couple of staff comments. First, I'd like to thank Cassandra Pruitt and Zinda Jimenez from our finance department. They did a yeoman's job of putting together the ROPS and coordinating with our DOF analysts. So I really want to thank them for the many long nights that they stayed in the office getting this done and getting it submitted in time to you and ultimately DOF. And the second thing I wanted to mention is we have a regular board meeting scheduled for a week from today, Wednesday, March 5th. And if it's okay, we would like to hold that meeting with you because we received word from our DOF in regards to our long-range property management plan that we sent up to them in October following your review. They have some modifications that they would like made to the plan, and in turn, they'd like you as the Oversight Board to review that. So if you are all available, we would like to have a short meeting next week to consider those revisions to the long-range property management plan.
Are we as a board available?
I believe we held the date.
I think it's the date that we originally agreed
Correct.
to, which was the
That's
first
reasonable.
Wednesday of
First
of
Wednesday.
every month, and that, so it shouldn't be too much of a hardship.
Thank you.
Any other comments? And the board extends their appreciation also. Any other comments? We don't have need for a closed meeting, do we? Then I'll entertain a motion of adjournment.
Adjourn?
Second.
We are adjourned. And thank you for all coming.